I just have very vivid memories of being a first grader and people talking about dinner and not knowing how to explain sinigang. So I would lie and said, yeah, I had steak and potatoes for dinner too.
Oh, okay.
So, and I know I'm not the only Filipino
not at all.
who's
I mean,
had a very
so you
similar
already
story.
felt the pressure to sort of, I guess, hide.
Yes.
You know, right? The like an embarrassment of like, I'm not a normal American eating steak like my classmates. And I'm eating sinigang, which, by the way, big ups to sinigang, best soup in the world.
Hey.
Fine, girl. Hi, and welcome back to Flavor Profiles, a podcast conversation about the Filipino American experience through the lens of food. I'm Karina, your host. This week, I'm getting my caffeine on in the Bay. Listen to my conversation with Corazon Padilla. Corazon, with a rolling R, is the QC at San Francisco's Andytown Roasters and the International Relationship Coordinator at Kalsada Coffee, located in the Philippines. We chat about her search for culture, community, and connection. Flavor Profiles, the podcast, is next. All right, everybody, Flavor Profiles, season 5, post-pandemic. Woo! We're here, we're doing it, we're in the Bay. I'm going to let our next guest introduce herself, but I'm sitting here at Trellis, the co-working space. I have the pleasure of having a fresh cup of coffee in front of me. Well, she did her best and I'm going to try it. It actually smells delicious. I'm a coffee addict. So I will let her introduce herself. Introduce yourself, my dear.
Hello, my name is Corazon Padilla. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the International Relations Coordinator for Kalsada Coffee based in the Philippines.
Yeah, Kalsada Coffee based in the Philippines.
The company is based in the Philippines, but I am based in San Francisco.
Okay, so you live here in San Francisco.
I do, yes.
Okay, we're going to get in. Like, let me try this. You want me to try this coffee?
You know, I would love for you to try it. This is a test batch roast, so it's not perfect, but I think there's a lot of potential in here. There's some tweaking that I want to do, but I'm quite happy with this brew.
And this that I'm drinking is
from the Philippines.
Nice. Yes, the beans are from the Philippines.
Yes, they are.
And this is what you do.
Yes.
Okay. We're going to rewind a little bit because that's what we do here. I want to know, where were you born and where were you raised?
I was born in Quezon City, but my family and I moved here right before I turned 3, like maybe 5 days before I turned 3 years old. I moved to the U.S., flew into San Francisco International Airport, and my family and I stayed in Walnut Creek with my aunt for a little bit. And my parents couldn't really find work, so we moved to Reno, Nevada. And that's where I grew up, which is about 4 hours away from here.
Yeah, Reno. Okay. Did they work in the casino or something?
They did. The usual story.
Oh, it's so sad. I'm like, stereotype and pretty typical, like like Reno has casinos.
Yeah.
I think that's it. Especially when you say work, right? Getting from the Philippines here, you're looking for work. So you were raised in Reno. What was that like, being a Filipino lady?
There was a Filipino community over there, but I lived in a predominantly lower income white neighborhood.
A white?
White, yes, of course.
Okay, in Reno, that's where they're at. Yeah.
But I grew up in a lower income neighborhood, and not necessarily a bad thing, but I think growing up, I felt rather disconnected from other Filipinos.
Yeah.
And I think there was a Filipino community there, but I didn't go to school with them. And by the time I was in high school, there were like more Filipinos. It was hard for me to relate to them in a lot of ways.
Did you, because you came here young and you went to high school in Reno and
went to college there too.
You went to college there also. Did you learn or speak Tagalog at all, or Ilocano or any Filipino dialect?
I spoke Tagalog at home. My parents didn't really force me to speak it because, the usual story. My sisters had to go through ESL, and I think for my parents, they never necessarily forced me to speak it at home, but they would talk to me in Tagalog, and I would respond in English because if I'm in school all day speaking English, my natural response is to be in English, and it was never really like forced on me.
So you understand.
I can understand. I can speak okay.
Right.
And I would say that I think my Tagalog has improved.
Right.
I went to the University of Nevada, Reno. My background, actually, before working in coffee, I have a background in sociology and international affairs, minored in music. But my first job straight out of college was actually working at a nonprofit organization. And I facilitated international exchange programs that were sponsored by the Department of State. So basically soft diplomacy. I got into sociology and international affairs because like for me, psychology wasn't really my thing. And I thought sociology was cool. I took a class and
I love sociology
yeah,
in college.
well, the thing that really got me was I took a class on race and ethnicity.
Yeah.
And that was like really a lot for me. Now, I didn't end up pursuing work necessarily in sociology because I felt like the department said, here are all these problems, now fix it. I'm like, how am I supposed to fix all of this crap that's happening in the world? And I think also with my interest of like race and ethnicity, I had a hard time kind of processing my own trauma with being a brown person.
Yeah, growing up in an all-white world.
Pretty much,
Pretty much, right?
But the international thing, I think like that I really gravitated to that because there's this idea of connecting with people who are different from me. Global, yes, who could understand other things. But not surprisingly enough, my studies in international affairs.
Yeah, your studies.
Yeah, my studies. They were my focus was in European studies, which is interesting.
Wow.
Yes, I think looking back now, it's like yes, it would be nice to not other my own people. Let me other the other people.
Okay. Did you want to become a diplomat?
At one point, I wanted to.
Yeah.
I think so. I think I wanted to work with the foreign
we hear
service.
about that, and I've seen it like on fucking Homeland and shit. But what is a diplomat?
I mean, that's a very good question. I think.
I mean, we hear it in the news a lot, and how it depends on I guess who you're talking to. But yeah, what does a diplomat do? What's the point?
I mean, if we're thinking about it in political terms, people think about the UN. It's people in politics talking about stuff, and that wasn't the kind of diplomacy that I was focused on.
Okay.
Even though like it seems like it, what I enjoyed most about that work was the soft diplomacy and more of like, I mean, okay, I guess the meetings themselves with people was soft diplomacy. But what really got me is like when visitors came, setting up a dinner with somebody in town who's like, hey, I'd love to host some people for dinner and have those conversations in between.
Nice.
And I think diplomacy itself, there's this idea that diplomacy is you have to go to college and do all of these things, but there is also a sense of exchange when you are just having dinner with someone that you just met that is from someplace else.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a whole scale. Like I think as we have the ability to affect international relations at a very small, like personal scale. And it doesn't have to be an exchange of papers or like business per se.
Yeah, it's like a relationship.
It's a relationship. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Because when I think diplomat, I think license plate. Right? Like, I'm like, versus, right?
Yeah.
Don't you always think you go, consul?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the usual thing that people think of diplomacy.
Yeah, right. I'm a diplomat. Anyways. So yes, that's what okay. So but if people are having dinner and stuff, people are going to Reno to have these dinners, or were you somewhere else? Did you go somewhere?
They were in Reno, yeah. And so how these exchange, we would write proposals and how it would be.
Because Reno's not big.
It's not big. Yeah. And I think that was the point of those exchange programs, is to show the diversity of the US. I mean, again, it is an exchange program. You're trying to show like, hey, again, how diplomacy works.
Does every university or city have a space for that?
Not necessarily. Okay. I mean, the organization that I work with it's called the Northern Nevada International Center. They were just part of the university, but there are dozens of organizations spread throughout the US that aren't necessarily a part of a university.
Okay.
So,
yeah. I mean, I've been to Reno like once. I think,
how long ago?
Yeah, a very long time ago.
It's changing.
When I legitimately drove with my mom and my cousin. We were going to Vancouver, and my mom's a gambling addict, and she was like, "Let's stop in Reno." And I remember thinking, "What the fuck is Reno?" Yeah. I might have been there one other time, but I can't even remember. But there were a lot of trees.
Trees are beautiful.
Yeah,
the air is great.
It was good. Yeah,
miss the air.
I mean, the air now. I don't know, because of everything. But okay, so we get there. You're doing that for 4 years, and then what happened?
As one does, working in nonprofit, as working in nonprofit,
right?
It was challenging, and I felt like I needed to do something different. And there was a part of me, I think I loved working at that job and actually getting international affairs, because I met other people that I worked with who were also looking for something else, trying to make a connection with the rest of the world and trying to figure out where they fit in. And at that point, I was working on the programs that I wanted, but there was something missing for me. And I felt like I just needed to change. And part of it was a sense of community. I didn't know what my community was. I struggled a lot with understanding who I am as a person. Am I American? Am I Filipino? It's always that question of you're not Filipino enough or you're not American enough.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And so one of my motivations to leave Reno and move to San Francisco was maybe I could have a Filipino community here, the one that I felt like I could resonate with.
Right. So did you feel like you were disconnected and that coming here would connect you?
In some hopes, yes. Because I think, again, going back to the Filipino identity, like people would say, oh, you're Filipino. It's like, yes, but there's something, what does that even mean?
Yeah. What was it present in your household?
It was present in my household.
Yeah. Did you eat Filipino food?
Of course. But there's also this idea of, even I just have very vivid memories of being a first grader and people talking about dinner and not knowing how to explain sinigang. So I would lie and said, yeah, I had steak and potatoes for dinner too.
Oh, okay.
So, and I know I'm not the only Filipino
not at all.
who's had a very
so you already
story.
felt the pressure to sort of, I guess, hide, right? Like an embarrassment of like, I'm not a normal American eating steak like my classmates, but I'm eating sinigang, which, by the way, big ups to sinigang, best soup in the world.
Hey.
But back then, it's like, how do I explain this tamarind, like soury, beautiful, fragrant soup that everybody eats, either with pork or whatever. It's just easier for me to say steak and eggs.
Yeah.
Or steak and potatoes.
Just please don't let me be somebody different. I already look different. You guys make it clear that I am different. Let me just find a relationship with
you. Did they make it clear that you look different?
I mean,
did you feel that, or was that really actually made known to you?
I mean, it's not intentional, but nobody ever lets you forget that you are different.
You present as a Filipino woman.
Yeah. Even if I say I'm American, there's always that question, oh, no, where are you
where are you from?
I mean,
where are your parents from?
The first time I actually felt like I could answer that I'm as American was the first time I traveled to Europe and somebody asked me where I'm from and I did not know how to answer.
Okay.
I was like, I'm Filipino, but I live in the US, so I guess I'm American. That was the kind of response I had to people.
So did you at home, when you were growing up, what Filipino traditions did you know? Or were you assimilated at home?
It was a very Filipino household.
Yeah, okay.
Noche Buena, and then, Christmas being the biggest thing of the year.
Catholic,
yes.
Okay.
Got my first communion when I was in second grade.
Okay, so did you code switch when you went to school? Were you like all of a sudden like, well, damn, I'm leaving behind. Now I'm American.
I mean,
I'm Cora. Maybe. I'm American.
I don't know. Well, pronunciation of my name was different for sure.
Right.
I was fine with people just saying, oh, this is Corazon.
Yeah.
And I accepted that pronunciation of my name for a long time.
And now we roll our R's.
Now we roll our R's. Like, no, my name is Corazon. And you can try. Yeah. And if you can't do it perfectly, that's fine. But the effort means a lot to me.
Right. Or we can, so do you ever go short, Cora?
Cora. The funny thing is, growing up, it was just Cor.
Yeah.
But then here, friends have started to call me Cora. And I was like, Cora? I don't know how I feel about that. But now I've accepted it. I think it's a part of my personality.
To the core. Got it. Okay, so we're doing this. We're in San Francisco now, Bay Area, which is extremely, I would say, very pro-Filipino. A lot of parts, not actually a lot. I mean, it depends, right? Like in Oakland, Bay Area, and you're here. You're somewhere in your subconscious. You are trying to connect to culture,
yes,
right? Because it wasn't in Reno.
Reno,
I don't really think of.
The thing is, over there in Reno, growing up, it's like it's not that my closest friends were white and they like appreciated me, and in some ways, I accepted like I'm the token Asian, and it's cool, and I was okay with being the token without really recognizing like, is that okay?
Yeah, well, I mean, you don't when you are one, right? Yeah, I don't think they understand even what tokenism is.
I mean, especially at that point in time, and so I wanted to learn more about coffee, and I started working for another company where they took their coffee education seriously. Yeah. And that's where I really fell in love. And I realized that there is more to coffee than making a drink in a cafe.
Brown water.
Which, it's not necessarily a bad thing. I think the cafe culture is what brought me in. I love the idea that people will come together and have a solid conversation over anything and everything with a cup of coffee. Like, I
think that goes back a little to the diplomacy.
Yeah.
Right? You're having a conversation. Yeah. Just talking to people, whether it be over dinner or a cup of coffee. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, you're rooted in that. And you know how to, you're a very good speaker. I feel like very diplomatic. Yeah. So think the coffee, much like meals, right, or food, it's an introduction to culture. And there is a coffee culture.
Yes.
Yeah. So you do that. And then were you like, this is Eureka, this is what I want to do?
Pretty much. I said, coffee's fun. I think I'm just going to, it was more of, this is fun. I think I'm going to do this for a little bit because this is fun. And then the longer I worked in it, I thought, I think I can make a career out of this. I just don't know where am I going to be in the coffee world.
Yeah.
Right?
What part was fun though? Was it the meeting people? Was it the coffee education?
It was a little bit of everything.
Okay.
So I think going into college, we're taught, hey, you go to school and then you work an office job and that's what you're looking for. So I actually never really had any work in service beforehand until after I worked an office job.
Right.
And so I think being behind a coffee bar, having that face-to-face interaction and knowing what it's like to have an interaction with a customer and making them feel good about themselves.
Right. That's a skill.
It's not only a skill, but it's a different level of connection. And it's very humbling to recognize
100%.
It gave me a better appreciation for everything that my parents did. They were professionals back in the Philippines and they came to work in service jobs in the casinos.
Right.
Very hard labor.
Well, here's a little fact about moi that you might not know because it's not always on the gram. I owned a coffee shop.
That's right.
I owned a coffee shop. It was called Butter Tart. Delicious, not nutritious. And it was in Glassell Park in Eagle Rock in LA. And I opened it and it was a mashup of my Canadian roots and Filipino roots. Cool. And I opened it in a very, local neighborhood where I lived. And it was fun. Yeah. It was you got to know people. I still have some of those people as my friends today. Yeah. And you knew their order. You knew what they came in.
You get it.
Yeah. And it was like an affordable luxury.
Thank you. Not a lot of people say that coffee is an affordable luxury.
It is.
If you're listening to this and you think that coffee is too expensive, you are not paying enough.
Well, there was that moment when I forgot who that financial advisor was. And I think it was a woman that kept saying like, well, if you don't buy the latte every day and da-da-da, it's like, why are you telling me not to buy the latte? Why don't you tell the billionaire dude not to buy the boat? Yeah. Like, why are you telling me that? Maybe this is the only thing I have to connect to somebody in a day. And if who cares? If it's $5, the $5 is better than buying cigarettes. And by the way, I'm not even opposed to cigarettes. Like, you do you. Yeah. So it is an affordable luxury. And when people would come in, I mean, that's how you got to know people. You knew what they were drinking. They would say hi to you. And I used to always tell my employees, my staff, like, it's brown water at the end of the day, if somebody wants to say that. But the thing is, what they're looking from you is just like a connection. Whether you know their name, forget their name, know their coffee or not, just be cool with them. Because it's actually customer service a lot of the time. Just, hi, how are you? Hey, that's what it is.
I was thinking, okay, how can trying to figure out what am I going to do for work? How can I marry my newfound love for coffee in like a profession and then like do some of that international stuff again.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, man, I miss hopping on a plane.
So you thought international, but not specifically Philippines, or were you already thinking
Philippines? I think
Philippines?
at that point I was like Philippines because at that point I just wanted to figure out a way, how can I connect back
What
home?
year are we in at this point?
Oh, this is like maybe 2015, 16.
Okay.
I got a job as a trainer at Andytown Coffee Roasters it's in San Francisco. Okay. The roastery is like 10 blocks away from the beach. Okay. And I become a trainer and I have an opportunity to do things that I want to discover in coffee or like create training programs that made sense to me. Okay. And about a year in, there came an opportunity for me to grow into my position and become more of a QC person.
Explain for the audience in the back what a QC is.
Basically, knowing our coffee menu and being able to determine, hey, is this meeting our goals for this coffee? Okay. Is this coffee tasting the way we intend it to? Okay. If that makes sense. It's like.
So I imagine you learned about coffee on the job.
I learned about coffee on the job and I made it my business before I even became that person. I thought, well, I'm the trainer. Yeah. And if I'm supposed to train the rest of this team on like how coffee should be prepared, I should at least have a really good understanding of what is it that we're serving. So I would go to the cupping. So cupping is a method of tasting coffee and evaluating it.
Yeah, like a wine, like when people do wine, right?
So I did that, and I guess in that.
So you really leaned in. You were like, this, I found my thing.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, because as much as I loved working in service, I thought, man, I am tired of being on my feet. My lower back hurts. Right. And I just wanted to do something different. I think education, I lean towards training because one of the things that excites me the most just in general, I love being able to show something to people and people recognize that they have this new ability that they've never had before. So when I talk about coffee and I try to explain to them, okay, people say, I don't know if I'm a good taster. I was like, you can taste things. You just don't have the vocabulary around it. So let me help you. And I would bring out images or make suggestions.
Yeah.
And then at the end of it, they're like, oh, I never would have thought about that if you didn't mention it. And now I'm going to keep thinking about it. So just seeing how people light up when they learn something new was really exciting to me.
Right. And I feel like it ties back to when I asked you about being Filipina, queer, you're like, I didn't have the vocabulary to express it. So same thing with coffee. Like some people don't have the vocabulary. Like, why do you like it? I don't know. It just tastes good. It's like, is it the full body? Is it the aroma? And some people just don't, they're like, I don't know. It just tastes dope. Like it's, and I'm awake. Right? Yeah. So I also do diplomacy. You have a good communication style. And I think to be in that space, you do have to be able to communicate, right? Because you're talking to
meeting people where they are.
Yeah. And also, I mean, if you're meeting a lot of international people, you don't know their language. Like some people have language barrier, they have a custom barrier, they've got, right, there's a lot of shit going on. So you're skilled at that. So training people and communicating to people what your goal is and what they need to get to doesn't seem far off.
Thanks.
So you're doing this, and how do we get into now? I feel like you run game on that shop. You're like, well, I'm doing this where we're at, and I'm gonna look at Filipino coffee, right? So when does Filipino, like that coffee, that notebook that you put away, come back into play?
I think it was when I was still a barista trainer at this time, but at one point when I was still working at that other company before I moved over to Andytown Coffee Roasters, I was thinking, oh, remember that notebook? I'm gonna do this little Googling. And then I happened to land upon Kalsada Coffee.
Yeah.
And so I reach out and
what did you Google?
I said,
coffee from the Philippines.
Specialty Philippine coffee. Whatever
in the Google
I could.
Machine. Okay.
In the machine. And so I saw the website. I was like, oh, this seems really cool.
Yeah.
I'm just going to email Baby Barista Me. Hi, I'm a Filipino American. I heard about this. I'd love to connect and learn more if there's a possibility. And I was like, are they ever going to get back to me? I don't know. I'm just going to shoot my shot.
Yeah.
And I got an email back from the founder, Carmela Reno. And she said, sure, let's have a conversation.
Wait, hold on. Where was Kalsada at when you found it on the internet? It was in the Philippines or was it in the Bay Area? Where was it?
I mean, Kalsada is based in the Philippines, right?
And so you're emailing somebody and they're responding to you from the Philippines.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, well, because I mean, when I was reading the story, Carmel is from the Pacific Northwest. And so it's like started from there.
Okay.
But we have a conversation and I'm learning that there's still a lot that they were trying to do. They didn't have a lot of coffee exported.
Yeah.
And I was asking, is there anything I can do? And at that point, it's like, well, not necessarily. We're not at the stage of trying to figure out just what are we doing?
Yeah, especially
trying to get the name out. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
But we said, let's keep in contact. Carmel said, I'm going to go back. I'll be back in the US at some point, and it would be great to meet and connect. And if there's coffee available, we'll figure that out.
Can I ask?
Yeah.
Kalsada and Carmel, is it like her family farm? Is it?
So Kalsada Coffee is basically, it's an exporting company, but it's an organization, I guess you could say, that's a social enterprise.
Okay.
Yes.
And based in the Philippines.
Based in the Philippines.
Okay.
Yes.
So you guys email, they're not ready. You're like,
yeah,
all right.
I mean, it was just more of like a conversation because at that point I'm like, I don't know what to do with my life and I want to see if there was an opportunity for to work with them. And at that point there was no work, but it's like, let's continue this conversation. And I said, great, I want to keep connecting. So months later, like 6, 7, 8 months later, I get a message from Carmel. And this is when I'm already a barista trainer at Andytown Coffee. And she says, hey, how are things over at Andytown? Are you guys interested? The green buyer would be interested in coffee? Yeah. And I was like, oh, let me ask. And so my boss was like, sure.
Okay.
Let's give it a shot. We tasted the coffee.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, because I mean, I think if you're somebody is buying coffee, you want to keep an open mind to people. And the Philippines, people don't know about it as a specialty coffee producing region. So we're like, let's give it a shot. And especially since I had that connection there, it made sense.
You're also a Pinay.
Yeah.
And you are in San Francisco. Yeah. There are a lot of Filipinos here. Yeah. So it would behoove the Andy people to be like, this might be a good thing.
So we tasted it and we thought it was good, but I'm not a green buyer. And we were trying to figure out like the pricing is not within traditional what people would assume for that coffee.
Right.
And it Andytown said, we want to buy the coffee, but right now at this point where we are, I don't know if it's possible just based off of the price. And also we don't know if who is going to want to buy it. Like we had to think about the customer base. And, Kalsada said, our prices are firm, but thank you. Would like to continue talking at some point.
We like when Filipinos big up their value.
So Carmel and I still connected. There was an event happening. There was a coffee expo happening in April of that year.
In what city?
I believe that was Seattle that year. Yeah. So there was going to be the first ever Philippine coffee booth. I think it was sponsored by ACDI Boca.
Nice.
And Carmel was one of the people who was asked to help organize it.
And you were going there?
Yeah, I was going there through Andytown. Yeah. But I said, I'd be happy to volunteer. So we connected over there. And then Carmel said after that, she's like, hey, I'm actually going to be in San Francisco as well for something else. And I said, great. Well, do you want to come do a presentation about Philippine coffee at Andytown? And she said, yeah,
I
sure.
do.
Yeah. So we had a small event at the roastery. She talks about Kalsada Coffee. And there was a small group of people who came, just like a good handful were Filipinos.
Sure.
And then some other folks who were just like, a presentation at the roastery. You get to taste some coffee from another region. Why not? And my boss, she posted some stuff on Instagram saying like, hey, we got these folks from Kalsada telling us about Philippine coffee. Do you want to see Philippine coffee on our shelves? And when people responded, it was like pretty much 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. About time.
So we saw that and we thought, okay, maybe we should take a chance on Kalsada.
Right.
So we Andytown bought 5 bags of coffee.
And that's how it started.
That's how it started.
Did you like the coffee?
We liked the coffee too.
Yeah. Right. I mean, that's an important part of the thing.
We liked the coffee.
Not just that it's from the, because I do things where like, if it's from the Philippines or a Filipina
person. Support.
All day. All fucking day. I'm like, I don't give a fuck. And then you go, let me taste this real quick. Hold on 1 second. And then you're like, all right, that's hard.
Yeah.
Okay, that's not that great. And then you just leave it alone. But like my first instinct is right off the bat to support, right?
Yeah.
And then you go, and then I go into the like, oh, this tasted really bad.
Yeah.
Right. So Kalsada tasted good.
Yeah. And, and in my mind, it's like there was also a lot of pressure for me because I'm like, I made this connection, and if it's not good, like if we get the coffee and it's not good, then it falls on me. So it's like,
did you feel like Filipina woman too? Like you're like, represent.
I don't know. For me, it was just kind of stressful, but also exciting that like I'm getting something that I can connect to.
Yeah. And that it's unique.
Yeah.
It was very, I mean, from what you're saying, nobody else had it.
No, at least not that I was aware of, at least in the Bay Area.
Okay. All right. Which is very, I mean, like they weren't, Kalsada from the Philippines wasn't pushing out into like the United States or at least like where the Filipinos are at.
Well,
right?
It's harder just because at that point, even now, we haven't been able to fill a full container of coffee because our production with the farmers that we're working with, it's still not enough to fill a container.
Okay.
So it's hard to be able to promote. And also if green buyers in general, if Philippines is not considered like a region that's producing high quality coffees, people aren't really going to be interested. It's hard to push it.
That's another conversation
It's another conversation.
Yeah, why is that?
And then also, this idea of what does high quality coffee taste like? The flavor profile that you find in Southeast Asia in general is different from, it's not going to taste the same as coffees from Africa.
Correct.
It's just not
Flavor profile.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Hey!
We get it in there when we can. Okay, so they talk about it. They're here. You're excited. You guys decide to order it and go with it. So what's it like now? Like, first of all, I think you feel accomplished, like from that one email to like a whole thing, right? Yeah. Kalsada, I've seen around. That's how I knew it. And then somebody else told me about you. So I was like, oh, let me hit her up. I'll be in the Bay. And how are you feeling about Philippine coffee from the Philippines now?
I mean, there's a lot of potential.
Yeah.
I think there's still a lot to learn.
Okay.
A lot of research that still needs to be done. There is a Philippine coffee board. They're trying to push forward more coffee production.
Yeah.
I will say.
Have you been there?
I have not yet. I was supposed to go last year, and then the pandemic.
I was meant to. Thing called the pandemic.
Yes.
Which stops a lot of shit. But do they see a future in the United States? Is that what their goal is? Like to start being the people that provide a lot of coffee to a lot of places?
I don't know if I can speak for the Philippines itself.
Right.
I can speak for Kalsada.
Yeah,
and
the coffee company.
For our coffee company, is we want to push forward high quality coffee that is sustainable for the folks who are producing it.
Okay.
Right. We want to make sure
they're
that
from the Philippines.
Yes, we want to make sure that they are reaping the benefits of like they're pushing forward good work and they're wanting to stay home because this is what happens in not this is not just unique to the Philippines or like coffee growing regions in general, but if there isn't enough income to be able to support a family, what happens? People leave and find opportunities elsewhere to send money back home.
Yeah, the remittance.
Right? Yeah. So the idea and also, you need young people to want to stay in coffee in order for there to still be coffee. So the hope is that if we are able to work with farmers and give them the tools they need to succeed and help them be a part of the process of making big decisions for their farms and like their production, they have control of their livelihoods.
Okay.
Right.
And these are Filipino farmers.
Yes.
In the Philippines.
Yes.
Right. So what is it going to take to get there? Like, how do people start respecting the coffee beans from the Philippines?
Oh, how do I answer that question?
Well, I mean, isn't that kind of where it's at, right? When you go into a spot, somebody has approved of where the coffee had come from and who made it, and they have labeled it like, oh, this is coffee from Costa Rica, and this is great. Who is the person or what needs to happen for somebody to be like, yo, that coffee from the Philippines is the shit. It is delicious. It's great because it is. And I guess I want to say like, who is the gatekeeper for the coffee?
I mean,
right? Isn't that what we're kind of trying to get at? Isn't that right? Because here's the thing. I had a coffee shop.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't serve Kalsada Coffee. We served like intelligentsia or like groundwork. Okay. One, I mean, there's a lot of
good coffee.
There's a lot of business aspects to things that people don't get. You need to be able to get stuff from people who can supply you consistently all the time at a certain price. So there's that. But yeah, did I think about Filipino coffee back then? I might have, but it didn't. It wasn't local.
Where did you find it?
Yeah, what was I going to do? But that was more than 10 years ago, a decade. And like for me to think that we haven't come that far, even though your story is good, I think we've come far, but not that far.
Yeah.
Who the fuck says that this coffee is valuable and this one's not? That's kind of where I'm at with obviously Phlavor Profiles, because if people don't know about it, don't push about it, don't ask about it, then we're not going to get there. Right. And it's an education process, information process. And I honestly think a lot of people just don't even think it's available.
Yes.
Right. Because it's so marketed to us that it's not, that it's another country that does all these things and not us. Right. Just like many things from the Philippines. Until all of a sudden you see it in fucking Whole Foods and you're like, that fucking coconut water is how much? Okay. Right. So I think it's also marketing.
Yes.
Right. And it sucks that it is that, but that is a huge part of business where you can convince people that, can you just try it first? And then you can tell me if it sucks.
Yeah.
So how are we going to get there? How are we going to get Kalsada, which is tell people what Kalsada actually is. Is it it's a nonprofit, or is it what is it?
It's not really a nonprofit. I mean, we're a business, but our goal is to figure out how to get resources to farmers in a community and give them tools to succeed.
Okay.
And with what that means, like we started off as a Kickstarter in order to build a mill for the community.
Yeah.
Like, because I think when Kalsada started, Carmel went out there along with our now country director, Tere, and they met with farmers just asking like, how are things growing over here and what do you need?
Yeah.
And they figured, okay, maybe starting a mill is the first thing that we need so that people have access to process their own coffees and not just like have somebody buy it and get less for it.
Yeah.
Be able to process your own stuff. So that's how the Kickstarter started, is get the mill going.
Okay.
And I remember like when we got the coffee, my boss asked me, he's like, hey, do you want to write about something since you made the connection? And I ended up just writing a longer story of how the coffee came to be. And for me, having this coffee come here, it wasn't just like, hey, I'm getting coffee from like my motherland. It was me reclaiming a space that I felt like I didn't have. I was coming to terms with my own Filipino American identity.
Yeah.
And so I wrote this blog post that was published, and it was released a day or so before the coffee was going to be on our shelves. And
published where?
Just on our website and on our social media, saying like, hey,
you guys have a good following.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, people read.
Yeah. But when that coffee hit the shelves, people came in and 5 minutes later, the shelves were empty.
Yeah.
So people resonated with my story, which was a big deal for me because this is the first time I was actually ever putting out a very vulnerable part of myself.
Yeah, personal.
Out there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what we had learned from that is you don't have to have a coffee that is very crazy, fruity in flavors.
Yeah.
People feel good about knowing where their money is going, knowing it's going to support people.
Right.
And also know like what is the connection, like
Yeah.
the human connection.
The history, the story.
Yeah. So when you were asking earlier, like who are the gatekeepers, who are the ones advocating for this right now, it's people who look like me.
Right.
It's us who are saying this is our coffee and this is good. And you don't like it, somebody else will. Well, that's how I ended up getting involved in Kalsada Coffee is after being in Andytown for a couple of years, and Kalsada's growing.
Right.
Carmel, we've been talking throughout this whole time.
Yeah.
And at one point she says, we're growing and we're looking to like add on another person to help build like the relationships.
Nice.
And she straight up said, I feel like you've been doing the work for us without even actually having in a formal position. And we'd like to invite you to be a part of the team because you're already doing the work and be a part of us. And for me, I thought that was really exciting to do that and learn how to be a part of making change in addition to, what I was already doing in Andytown. So I'm still at Andytown as a quality person.
Yeah.
And now as the international relations coordinator for Kalsada.
It all came together.
It all came together. Like,
it's amazing.
I don't know how this happened, but it worked.
No, it happened.
I must have manifested it.
Yeah, it's supposed to.
It's so my role now is I'm trying to meet with other roasters or people. A lot of it is people coming up to us and saying like, hey, I heard about you guys, and I'll say, hey, thank you for thinking of us. You want to let's talk. Or I mean, even somebody who's like a home roaster saying, hey, is there any way I can get some beans? And I try to connect them to others who can help them, like give them some beans.
Right.
And for me, I see my role so much as if I'm someone who has been searching for community, I want to help create that community.
Right.
And as I was mentioning earlier, some of the biggest supporters of Kalsada Coffee have been Filipino Americans. And it's important that every person who even just buys one bag, from somebody who buys a roaster who buys one bag of coffee to even a customer who buys a bag, like you're a part of the Kalsada.
Yeah. Well, we contribute.
Yeah. Everybody has a role.
It's a contribution.
And it's important to make sure people feel like they have a space in that.
Yeah. And that they're valued.
Yes.
Appreciated for the small and the large.
Yes.
What does Kalsada mean?
Road in Tagalog. And Carmel was saying when they first started meeting with farmers, and Kalsada actually even just started off as a blog of Carmel trying to figure out what coffee was in the Philippines and how it was growing. Farmers thought, oh, you guys are building a road.
I love it.
And she had like, I mean, not physically building a road, but this is what they need. And we can be the conduit to like connect people.
100%.
And be able to connect farmers to market and be able to sell. And
I feel like your story the road led to this.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's a lot involved there, but it all makes sense.
Yeah.
And Kalsada I think when people are in business, a lot of it is, you have to appeal to the mainstream. And then you realize the mainstream ain't that loyal. The mainstream is not, they're fickle and it's too general. You're ride or die. The people that really support you are the people. Like it's actually a smaller set. Not to say that you don't want mainstream money because it helps build the business, right? But you need those people who are really interested in that thing you're offering. It's very select. And I feel like Kalsada is that. And if a lot more people knew about it, not the mainstream, but if it happens to be, that's great. You're not excluding anybody.
No.
But you want to offer it to the people who are looking for it and feel connected to it. And like you're just doing it like out of your core, like your heart. Like you're like, my intention, I don't know what's going to happen with this, but I like this thing and this is my connection. I feel like I'm down. And then they were like, oh, wait a minute, this lady, what? Oh, yes, makes sense, right? What do you see for the future of Kalsada Coffee and your role in it? Or what do you hope for the future?
Our hope for Kalsada is like, we want to be able to fill up a full container.
What does that mean? What's a container?
A shipping container.
Yeah.
If anybody's...
Because in my mind, you know what I see? I see like a coffee bin.
Yeah.
Like, So I see a coffee bin because every time I go to fucking Handsome Roasters, I'm always like, there's a coffee bin. Good coffee. But, a whole
shipping container to send out. I mean, I will say, there are
Phlavor Profiles, make that happen. Yes.
There are roasters in the Philippines who buy our coffee, but there's not enough demand, especially right now with the pandemic. But
so we got to change.
So we've got a lot of the supporters are coming from abroad.
Okay.
So being able to increase our volume means more money for the producers and being able to, like, again, support their families.
Sustainability. Farmers, got it.
So growth and always improving our quality. So right now we have some nurseries and trying to grow some like baby trees so we can rejuvenate the farms.
Okay.
But
I like it.
For my role in it, I want to continue to build a community with doesn't even necessarily have to be other Filipino Americans. Like, that's great. But for anybody else who believes in Philippine coffee and see its potential, I want to connect with those folks too.
Yes. Okay. Next question. I like that. That, again, we're going to do our best to big it up. The goal is to get a whole freight container, people. This is the goal. 2022.
2022.
Yeah, because 2020 and 2021 is kind of harsh.
It's still it's still 2020 to me.
Yeah, frankly. It is, right? I don't even say my birthday. I'm like, that year did not count. It's not even, it might be about coffee. It's about food and drink. But how do you feel about Filipino food? And culture. What are your thoughts about Filipino food and culture?
I mean, what about it? That's such a broad question. What do you want to know about it?
It is.
I think
I would ask you what your favorite food is, and a lot of people are like, "Oh my god, I don't know." And I usually go, "Give me your top 3." But I like the more like, what do you feel about Filipino food and culture at this present time? How does it make you feel?
Yeah, that's a great question. How do I start this? I would say, well, food is very personal. As a culture, like how we show our love for people by sharing food. Kumain ka na?
Yeah, eat.
Yeah, eat.
Did you eat?
There's always something to eat when you're going over. If somebody's coming over to our house, you don't show up empty-handed, right?
Yeah, right.
And I think now it's very exciting to see new interpretations of Filipino food, of younger people, of Filipino American, Filipinx. Folks who are pushing the envelope and saying, like, our food is amazing. And it's not just something that's in a pot, right?
Right.
It's so exciting to see that. But there is also something incredibly grounding and comforting to go to the mom and pop shop around the corner and still have that bulalo.
Yeah.
Sinigang.
I'm pointing at this. I would like that.
The thing that mom makes. Okay, maybe not quite as good as that your mom makes it, but it's still like, this is home.
It's pretty good.
And I have an appreciation for both. And I think there's some conversations in between that people are saying, like, oh, the old mom and pop shops, this is the new way. And then there's also some people saying, that's not Filipino food.
Right.
Well, no, because it's a mix of cultures. These are people who had an experience and they're trying to do something different.
Right.
It's
their version of Filipino food.
There's a connection there. And I don't think we have to separate it, but I think there's different ways to celebrate what they do. Mom and pop shops, they were there when the newer restaurants and pop-ups didn't exist. That was our home. And now we have this opportunity to shape a new future for ourselves and reconnect not just with other Filipinos, but people who are genuinely interested in learning more about our food and our culture.
Yes, thank you. Do you want me to ask you what your 3 Filipino favorites are? I mean, I feel like I need to ask.
I guess you have to ask.
Yeah, I do. It is Flavor Profiles, y'all. Give me your top 3. When you're going home or you're going to the Toro or you're going to a restaurant, when you see it, what's the thing you're like, man, I got to get that. That's always a thing.
I don't know. I can say what what my favorite things when I go home.
Sure.
Adobong pusit.
Yes.
One of my favorites.
Okay.
Kare-kare.
Yeah.
Classic.
That's in the top 3 of everybody.
I know. They're just classics, right?
Well, the pusit is different for those. Most people are,
pusit was my favorite when I was like 5.
Yeah.
So I'm a little bit different.
That's squid, everybody, in case you don't know.
Oh, yes. Yes. Squid cooked in its own ink with vinegar and all the goodness.
Yeah.
The third one.
Yeah.
I think this is spread around most cultures. This is not necessarily a Filipino dish per se. It's around all cultures, but my favorite, and if I were on death row, this is what I would have. Gun to your head,
yeah.
I want a whole fish that is fried, and I want rice, and I want vinegar and fish sauce, and I will eat it with my foot
up on
with my elbow on my knee, and eating. And maybe, I don't really drink Coke that much these days, so maybe I'll have like a calamansi juice or something.
There you go. Yes, thank you so much. Good answer. That's the best answer, because that's what when you do that, I'm like, that's my mom with a chicken bone right here, like sucking the marrow out. You know what I mean? All right, everybody, you can where can they find you guys? Where do you want people to look for you and the coffee?
Well, follow us on Instagram.
Okay.
Kalsada
being Andy
Coffee.
Roasters
Well,
or
for
Kalsada?
Kalsada Coffee, you can follow Kalsada Coffee on Instagram. We can feature whenever roasters are, releasing our coffee.
Yeah.
We'll put it on there.
Kalsada with a K. Kalsada. Kalsada.
Kalsada Coffee.
Right.
If you want to follow some companies right now that have our coffees, Mostra Coffee based
San
in San Diego,
right.
they always carry Kalsada Coffee.
And listen to their episode. They were on Flavor Profiles. What?
There's also Paradise Coffee. Kindness and Mischief. Mo,
yes,
you interviewed her. She
Mo was
will
on
be having
Flavor.
our coffee as
Don't
well.
forget the people, though.
There's Out of Office Roasters. They'll be having our coffee soon. Forte Legato out in the East Coast. 4-letter word. Andytown Coffee. We'll be having it later in the year.
Yes.
So the best way, if you want to check in, follow us, Kalsada Coffee on Instagram.
Okay. We're not following her personally. She has a life, guys. But we'll follow everything else she does. Thank you for coming. Flavor Profiles. You guys, we got to get that freight container filled. That's the goal.
It's going to happen. We're going to do it.
We're putting it out in the universe. And I'm calling all these mofos like, yo, let's do this. This is going to be awesome. Follow us on all the socials and look forward to seeing you guys on Patreon probably. Hopefully, we'll see. Thank you very much, my dear.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, peace and coffee, Grace? Or peace and patis?
Hey.
Yeah, bye. This episode is brought to you by the team at Flavor Profiles. Follow us on Instagram and be sure to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and wherever you listen to music, audiobooks, and other podcasts. Make sure to write a review and tell your friends and family. Thanks for listening to this episode of Flavor Profiles. Peace and adobo grease.